Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be painting a Stormhawk interceptor from start to finish. But first of all I want to say a huge thank you to my YouTube channel sponsors Goblin Gaming, who sent me this kit out for review. Please check the description box down below and you'll find a direct link to Goblin Gaming's web store so you can go and check them out for yourselves. This is going to be a long video guys, so go grab yourselves a nice hot drink and we'll get started. Here I'm priming at 20 psi using my Iwata CS Eclipse airbrush, which has a 0.35 needle nozzle set. With this airbrush I'm able to spray the primer undiluted, but you may find on certain brands of airbrush or needle nozzle sets you may need to thin this primer down. I'm spraying about 2 to 3 inches away from the model and I'm just working on one section at a time, slowly building up the primer layer without covering any of that gorgeous detail that you can see on the Stormhawk. Now I'm working at 15 psi as I'm moving closer to the Stormhawk. I've added 1 drop of airbrush thinner to 3 drops of Vallejo Model Air Black, and this enables me to get really thin accurate lines and the airbrush is able to cope well at 15 psi. You'll see that my work's not the most tidy here, as some of the lines will go off and sometimes I'll get little areas where I don't want the pre-shading to go. But this is okay. You can really speed through pre-shading as most of the mistakes that you make can be covered up with a subsequent pre-highlight layer, and also once you start the base coat layer, most of the pre-shading that you don't want can be covered as well. So don't worry if this is the first time pre-shading, as you really can't go wrong. Just make sure that once you are pre-shading that you're going and covering all of the panel lines on the model as you see that I'm doing here. Here I'm pre-highlighting with Vallejo Model Air White. I'm just going over some of the top areas of the model where I think that a natural highlight would be. Also, I'm covering up some of the areas where I was a bit overzealous with the Vallejo Model Air Black. Pre-shading and pre-highlighting is really fun to do, guys, and it's a great opportunity if you're new to airbrushing to actually get more control out of your airbrush and get used to how it flows. Now it's time to start base coating. I'm using Vallejo Model Air Ultramarine Blue, and as you can see, some of that pre-shading showing through, but very subtly. You can control how much the pre-shading shows through by how thick you apply the base coat layer, but basically I wanted it to be very subtle. You can make it more prominent if you desire by either making the black darker in the pre-shade or making the blue layer really thin. But ultimately, you're in control of how the pre-shading shows through. Now it's time to start adding some highlight layers. I'll start off using Vallejo Game Air Magic Blue, and as you can see, it's already starting to make the Stormhawk pop. I'll concentrate on the middle of each panel, leaving the cracks and crevices behind with the ultramarine blue, and as you can see, it's really starting to add volume to the Stormhawk and really making it to look nice. Now I'm adding the final highlight colour, which is Vallejo Game Air Electric Blue. I'm much more sparing with this colour, and I only want to place it on the really high surfaces of the model or any areas where I think a real extreme highlight would be achieved. If you go too far with this, you can make the miniature look really washed out, which can be a nice effect, so it depends on whether you want that effect or not. I personally just wanted a very subtle extreme highlight on this miniature. Here I'm going to be adding some Tamiya masking tape to the Stormhawk where I want to add a red strip. I got this idea directly from the artwork from the book, and it looks really cool with a red strip, so why not try it for ourselves. So here I am applying some 6mm Tamiya masking tape. I highly recommend Tamiya masking tape as it's really low tack, and the risk of damaging your paint job is very minimal. To make sure I don't get any overspray, here I'm adding regular household masking tape, but I'm very careful not to apply it to the actual paint on the miniature, as I don't want to damage it with this type of masking tape. The base colour that I'm painting here is Vallejo Game Air Gory Red. Now I'm adding a highlight just to the centre of the strip using Vallejo Game Air Bloody Red. It's time to take the masking tape off the model now and look at how good that strip looks. It took me only a couple of minutes to mask and paint the strip, but I think it really adds a cool effect to the miniature, and I highly recommend you experimenting using masking tape on your own models to create nice colour contrasts. Here I'm going to be adding a panel wash using MIG of Ammo's blue black colour. This is an enamel based product, and the reason I use an enamel based product is that cleanup is really easily achieved with regular white spirit. Also, it flows much better than an acrylic paint using enamel based product. The enamel based product won't harm your acrylic base paint at all, as they work harmoniously together. So mixing up using acrylics and enamel based products together can be really beneficial to your hobby. You'll see that I apply the panel wash quite sloppily, and you'll see that I actually leave quite a lot of stains behind, but I don't worry about this because after 15 to 10 minutes of letting the panel wash dry, I can then come back in with some white spirit and clean it up, which you'll see a little later on in the video. Here you can see me tidying up those stains that I've left behind with the panel line wash, and just by using the white spirit it's easily removed. Here we're going to be adding some decals. As you may know from following my channel from quite a while, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of decals. I cut the decals out very carefully with a scalpel. I will be using two separate solutions made by Vallejo. I'll be using Decal Medium and Decal Fix. I apply the Decal Medium to the model where I'm going to place the decal. I place the decal on the model, I move it into place, and it's done. You can wick off the excess decal medium here if you want to, or just let it dry naturally. But basically, once this is dry, I add the decal fix on top of this just to make sure that the decal is protected and securely in place. And that's it. Decals are really simple to use and they can look really cool and set off a model. Now it's time to start painting the metallics. I'm using Vallejo Game Air Chainmail Silver and I highly recommend this colour, guys. It paints beautifully with just one coat and it also leaves a really nice colour behind. Now I'm going to start weathering the Stormhawk, guys. I highly recommend these liquid pigment sets from Life Colour. They come in 6 pigments, well 5 pigments and 1 remover in each set, and they really work well on a matte surface. Here I'm using the road dust marks, or you could use rain marks, whichever one of the two you prefer, and I'm just making lines going down in a direction that natural flow of dirt, debris or rain would flow. I've got to be completely honest guys, when it comes to tutorials, I sometimes find myself rushing to get the job done because I'm looking at the time that it's going to take me to film and edit the video. I actually painted these weathering effects in about half an hour, which is really quick. You can achieve an absolutely phenomenal weathering job by building up the process layer after layer. I only went with one layer of weathering streaks on this Stormhawk, but further details can be added and further depth can be added adding subsequent layers. The really cool thing about adding weathering is you can actually make it as realistic or as cartoony as you like. What I mean by that is there's no right or wrong. You can add a tiny amount of weathering or you can add a lot of weathering to the vehicle. Here I'm adding a smaller amount of weathering, but on reflect, if I were to spend another hour or two, I would go with a few more layers of the weathering. After applying all of the rain marks or the dust marks, it's time to start removing some of the tide marks that were left behind or any stains that I don't think looks natural. This is easily done with the remover fluid that you get in the sets. Just apply it in a downward motion in the natural direction that the dirt and debris would flow, and start removing any areas or any of the dust and rain marks that you don't like the look of. Now I'm going to start adding some rust streaks to the Stormhawk. It's really important that you're sealing the previous layer of liquid pigments. Because they're active on the surface, adding subsequent colours will mix in between each other if you don't seal it in. So after applying the dust layers, I seal it in with satin varnish. You can use matte varnish depending on the end result that you want the vehicle to look like. After the varnish had settled and dried, then I started to add the rust layer. I'm quite sparing with the rust. The reason for this is because it's a flyer, I wouldn't feel it would be too rusty. The reason I'm adding the rust in the first place is that I think it'll add a cool colour contrast. Here I'm adding some soot effects to the Stormhawk using a Tamiya weathering master kit. These are absolutely fantastic for the beginner to achieve really easy and subtle effects. I highly recommend you picking one up, guys. All the metallics get a wash of Null oil. The base gets a base coat of Vallejo Game Air Earth. The metallics on the base are being painted with Vallejo Game Air Chainmail Silver. Unfortunately, the angle that I decided to film painting the rockets at is covering up what I'm doing. But I'm painting the rockets using Vallejo Game Air Wolf Grey, and I'm painting the tips of the rockets using Gory Red and a final highlight of Blood Red. The Achilles painted using Games Workshop's new Retributor Gold, which is a fantastic gold colour, guys. All of the metallics get a dry brush of Vallejo Model Air Aluminium. All the metallics get a wash of null and then are subsequently highlighted with a dry brush of Vallejo Model Air Aluminium, just like the metallics on the Stormhawk. And the base is washed with Agrax Earthshade. And here we have the finished Stormhawk. I have to add, guys, that I did rush the weathering stage on this vehicle, and I highly recommend you take your time doing this. I like to think of weathering as a story, so building up a narrative on the actual vehicle as you're weathering it really helps to build up believability and also makes the vehicle look cool. So you want to tell a story. If you feel something's extra rusty in one particular place, why is it rusty there? Why would there be extra mud by the tracks where it flicks up? So actually taking your time weathering vehicles can be really fun and also make them look cool in the end. I also want to say another huge thank you to Goblin Gaming, who sent me the kit out for review. Please check the description box down below and check out their web store. They are phenomenal customer service, guys, and I highly recommend you checking them out. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and if you did, please hit the like button, share it amongst friends, and also leave a comment on what you'd like to see me work on in future. I always like to read the comments. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.